Hello. Today I am talking about backstory and how you can use backstory to help develop your characters that are actually believable and relatable to your readers. The number one thing you want to remember about backstory is that less is more, actually. And the the if you put too much backstory into your book about your character, then you aren't leaving anything to your reader's imagination. You're taking away part of the adventure that the reader has signed up for. They want to make the connections on their own. They want to follow the clues that you're leaving along the trail of the book, and they want to be able to have the chance to figure things out for themselves. They don't care if they're wrong or right for the most part. They just want to be able to do some of the work for themselves. When we put in too much backstory, when we explain too much about why a character does what she does or says what she says or behaves the way she behaves, then we aren't left with our own version of the story that we're reading. So that's the number one thing you really want to keep in mind about backstory, is to make sure that you drip it along your story. So you definitely don't want to be dumping it all into a whole chapter. You do not want a whole chapter of backstory. You don't even really want a whole page of backstory, if I dare say it. I mean, there are exceptions to the rule, but you're safer when you can limit your backstory to smaller passages. As far as how do you go about figuring out what backstory to put into your book? I get a lot of questions from clients who say, okay, well, you've got me interviewing my character to get to know their history and how they were raised and what kind of family life they had, and how did they do in school, and what were they bullied, and all of this. And now I know I've got a really great palette of information that I can use to explain why my character is the way they are. But it's way too much. Like, I have years of history. So how do we know what to pick? What goes into my story? The first thing that I would say to that is, well, what is the ghost? So the ghost is really the pillar of your backstory. This is the big moment, the big event that occurred in your character's past. And it's usually their deep past, although it doesn't have to be. It just has to be big enough and influential enough that it shapes your characters, the way they look at life, their worldview, as well as their own their view of themselves. And the ghost is going to definitely be brought through your story. It's going to be it'll either come out as an event that relives itself for your character, or it could manifest in another way that's unexpected to your character. So it totally depends on the kind of story that you're telling. But you really want to figure out what that ghost is. The ghost is going to rule your character's view of their world and of themselves. So that means not only are they going to take control of your character's actions, his or her external actions, but the ghost totally takes control of their belief system, the things that they think, their opinions, their values, what's important to them, what are they afraid of, their likes and dislikes, all of that will absolutely hinge on the ghost, okay? So you want to make sure that the ghost is dictating a large portion of your character's inner journey as well as their outer journey. It's not just an event that is haunting them in such a way that it makes them too afraid to take action in their external world, it will also limit them in their own personal growth. So ask yourself if the ghost is doing that. Make sure that it's affecting their your character's inner journey as well as their outer journey. What you want there, I have a few tips for how you can write backstory strategically. The first one is to be sure that when you're dropping in the bits of backstory, that they're showing up at a time when your reader needs to have that information. So this is something that probably would that you would be able to figure out more clearly after you've already written a full draft. So you can go ahead, if you're working on your rough draft and you've got some backstory and you know that, oh my gosh, I've got, 6 pages of backstory, way too long. Don't worry about it now. I always say don't dive into revisions before your rough draft is complete, because you really don't know your story yet until you have a full rough draft. So flag it. If if it's something that's really bugging you, just flag it and you can journal about it. I'm a big believer in journaling your, post writing sessions, to just kind of check in and ask yourself, well, how do I think I did? How, is the story working? How's it feeling for me? All that jazz. And this would be and one of those things that you could do is to just flag that passage and write yourself a note. Way too much backstory. The reader does not need to know all of this right now. Deal with it upon revision or something like that. And then keep writing. That's so important, okay? Don't get caught up if you're in the middle of your rough draft, do not get caught up in those issues yet. Leaving unanswered questions surrounding your character's backstory can actually work to your advantage, unless it creates confusion for your reader. So you don't have to explain everything about your character, okay? Even by the end of the book, it is okay to leave some mystery. But if it leaves your readers dissatisfied with how things have evolved, if there are still unanswered questions that leave us feeling like, well, wait, where are things at? I'm not really sure about where the character's going to land. That could be taken care of in a sequel, but again, you want to be aiming for standalone books, even if you're writing a series. And so if it's a question that's really going to bother your readers, you're better off tying up that loose end. Again, readers pride themselves on their imaginations and their curiosity. Let them have that adventure of trying to figure things out for themselves. You can definitely drop clues along the way. You can, kind of lure them through your story, and give them little morsels to help satisfy them so that they're not feeling frustrated. And again, you don't want them confused. You don't want them feeling like, well, you promised me this kind of a story on your back cover and in all your social media. You promised me that this was the kind of story I'm getting. I'm already on page 178 and I am not getting that story. You want to be really mindful of that, okay? So you want to make sure that you're giving the story that you have promised your readers. The ghost, when we go back to the pillar of your backstory, it must relate to your character's story goal and their motivation. You want to make sure that whatever is driving them towards their story goal, the ghost is part of that. And usually the ghost is going to be creating resistance on the behalf of your character, bringing up some limiting beliefs, all of that, setting up some obstacles. The ghost is very good at putting up obstacles for your character. So you want to make sure that whatever your protagonists or whatever your point of view character, if they have a story goal, that the ghost has a role to play directly with that story goal. And then you want to make sure you're paying off all your hints regarding your ghost and regarding your backstory. Don't don't drop hints and then never follow up on them, okay? Make sure there's a payoff so that your readers feel like they're collecting clues, collecting rewards as they move through your story. Again, it's okay if there are some things that are left unanswered, but you want to make sure there's still a payoff to that, okay? So obviously getting feedback from trusted readers or fellow writers first, or a writing coach, or if you're in a writing group, running these questions by writers is really, really important before you try to bring your stories out to the public, because writers know what you're looking for. Writers understand the job that you're trying to do. And so if you have a question about whether or not your story is working on, with anything, not just backstory, but anything, run it by your fellow writers, and they can help you figure that out. And I think the final big tip that I have for you about backstory is that you want to make sure that your character has solid motivation behind everything that they do throughout your story and the kind of a person that they are. You want to make sure that everything that they say, they do, they think, there's a reason behind it. And those reasons always go back to the character's history, their ghost, their past experiences, their belief system, their values, and everything that they are now is a result of how they were in the past, right? And I mean, that's true in real life as well. And so if your motivation is weak, if it's lacking, then that will come through the story. Your character's actions won't be believable. Their pursuit of their goal won't be believable if the motivation behind the pursuit of their story goal isn't really grounded in any true desire or true regret or a need to set things right or anything. And all of those, reasons for pursuing a goal come from something that had happened to your character in their past, hence the backstory. So you get your backstory figured out, make sure it's solid, make sure it's really believable, and, kind of make sure that it's not dumped into your book, and then make sure that, whatever hints you do plant are paid off. And you will definitely be able to create believable, relatable characters that your readers will adore. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions at all about anything that I said, let me know in the comments, and I will talk to you next week. Take care.